If you had $500 in meta ad spend, how many streams could you expect to drive on Spotify? I am going to break down some of the math, and I will give you 3 potential scenarios: a poor performing campaign, an average campaign, and a very good campaign, and exactly what numbers you could expect with each. So without too much further ado, let's flip around to the old computer screen and get into it. So here we are at the old computer screen, and this is a spreadsheet that I use to show clients about how many streams they can expect if they run an average meta ads campaign. And so I have talked about some of these numbers before, but I will walk through these step by step at a $500 ad budget level and just give you 3 scenarios. We'll look at this first one, a below average ad campaign, one that performs kind of badly. We'll look at an average ad campaign, and then we'll look at a good ad campaign. Below average to start. There are 4 factors that determine how many streams you get. I talked about this in a recent video. Those are the budget that you're spending, the cost per result, how many streams you get per listener, and algorithmic activity. Now, I haven't factored in algorithmic activity on the spreadsheet because it is harder to attribute directly to ads, but obviously the budget is a pretty hard number, and then cost per result and streams per listener are all very hard numbers. They're just easier to track in terms of how your ads are influencing them. So this is a below average scenario. We are getting a cost per result here of 71 cents. This is from a real campaign that I ran in the last 6 months that did not do super well. And at that cost per result, with $500 in ad spend, you're getting 704 people through to Spotify. I call these listeners in this column. It's an approximation of listeners. There are going to be some of those clicks that don't turn into listeners. They click on the landing page. They never actually stream the song. But that is what that number is approximating. How many people click through to Spotify and hopefully listen to the song. And usually that should be a pretty high percentage of people who click through. So 71 cents per result per person getting through to Spotify. Now, the other factor is streams per listener. So how many times does somebody stream the song once they get over to Spotify? This is another real example of a below average ad campaign. 1.75 streams per listener. So every listener that got over to Spotify, on average, they stream the song 1.75 times. In general, if you're running ads, you should probably have a higher streams per listener than this if ads are your main source of traffic to the song, because ads are an engaged source of traffic. It's people who heard the song on Instagram or Facebook, demonstrated their interest, and then clicked the landing page to confirm their interest. And so typically most of these people are interested in streaming the song. If you had below 1.75, that would be concerning if ads were your primary source of traffic. So from there, the math is pretty simple. At $500, if we have 71 cents per result, we'll get 704 listeners. If each of those 704 listeners streams the song 1.75 times, we will get 1,232 streams. So this is a real life, below average, subpar example of what you could expect for $500. So what does it look like if we take these numbers up to an average range? Let's look at that next. So we're keeping our $500 in ad spend, but we have a CPR in this case of 45 cents, which is closer to an average range. Now, some people would still argue that you should be below 40 cents, that you should be even below 30 cents. But in my experience, especially if you're running to a tier 1 focused audience, 45 cents is a fairly representative cost per result. So in that case, you would get 1,111 listeners. And then the other number, 2.5 streams per listener. So this is also pretty average when ads are your primary source of streams. So with those numbers, you'd be looking at 2,778 streams in your first month. Honestly, this is a pretty average advertising scenario. If you have an ad campaign that is working, this might be what you could expect for $500. So here is an above average campaign, and honestly, that's kind of selling it short. This would be a banging campaign for sure. So $500 in ad spend still, cost per result of 14 cents. This is about as good as I've seen a campaign maintain over any length of time. So you might have a day where you get lower than this, but over like a month-long period, this would be an incredible cost per result. That would give you 3,571 new listeners over the course of that month. And then if each of those listeners was streaming it 6.5 times, which is literally the most I've ever seen a song be at in a 28-day period, 6.5 streams per listener, then that would give you 23,214 streams in that month. This would be about the best case scenario that you could expect from a $500 ad spend. Now, with that said, the obvious next question is, okay, well, how do things stack over time? If I'm spending $500 a month, what happens in month 2? And the answer, hopefully, is that things will stack, but the math gets harder to chart out. So there are 2 factors that will influence how well things will stack. The first is, again, your streams per listener. So does each listener that you have pulled over from this first month then stream it again in the second month? And if they do, how many times? So typically they won't stream it 6.5 times again in month 2, but say they stream it 3 times. Well, great. Then you can say this number times 3. So that would be 10,713 streams from the previous month of ad spend. And then you could add that if you kept the same level of performance, which again, best case scenario performance, you would then add another 23,214 streams. And the factor that we are not accounting for here is algorithmic traction. So I mentioned this in a previous video. I think a healthy level of algorithmic traction on a song is anywhere from 30 to 50%. And so let's estimate another 15,000 algorithmic streams, which for a total would give us 48,000 streams in month 2. And then you can imagine things starting to stack. You then have in month 3 streams from that month of ads. You would have fewer streams from the first month of ads, but also your streams from the second month of ads. Maybe a few more algorithmic streams as the percentage give you a bigger gross number. And so the idea is that over time, this should start to stack where your audience is growing. Now, you will eventually reach a plateau. The metaphor I like to use is that this is a leaky bucket. So you're always losing some of your listeners from older months who are just streaming your song less often as the time goes on. But you're always bringing in more people. So you'll probably reach a plateau, but it should grow at least over the first several months that you're running a successful ad campaign. So that is how many streams you could expect if you had $500 in ad spend. Obviously, you could have a campaign that performed worse or a campaign that performed better, but probably you're going to be in the range that we discussed. Yeah, it does vary more drastically over time. So 6 months from your $500 in ad spend, it's harder to predict what the results might be. But this hopefully gives you some idea of what you can expect. If you're interested in learning how to run meta ads for yourself, I do have a free Spotify mini course where we walk through the 4 ways to get Spotify streams. One of those is meta ads. I also have a membership where we help artists run their own ads. That's just $15 a month. And then obviously, shameless plug, we do offer managed meta ad services. So if you want to hire an agency that does this stuff, we're here. But yeah, hopefully that just gives you a little bit of context for what numbers you're looking at. And as always, whether you are planning to run meta ads or not, wishing you good luck as you make and market your music. You got this.